The alarm stopped blaring 3 hours ago, but Sarah Chen could still hear it ringing in her head. She sat in the captain's chair now, a seat that was never meant for her. The bridge smelled like burnt metal and something worse that she tried not to think about. Around her, the Vrexian warriors moved through their duties with mechanical precision. Their massive forms, each standing nearly 8 feet tall, seemed diminished somehow. Their golden fur was matted with dried blood and combat foam. Some of it was their own. Most of it belonged to their crewmates who would never move again. Sarah pressed her fingers against her temples and forced herself to focus on the navigation display. The Vrexian home colony was 6 hours away. 6 hours, and then she could hand over command to someone who actually belonged in this chair. Commander Chen. The voice rumbled from her right. Kraith, the war leader, stepped closer. His scarred muzzle dipped in what Sarah had learned was a sign of respect among his people. The wounded are stable. Engineering reports the jump drive will hold until we reach home. Sarah nodded. Thank you, war leader. Have the crew eat and rest in shifts. It's going to be a long 6 hours. Kraith's amber eyes studied her for a moment. There was something in that gaze she couldn't read. You should rest as well, Commander. You have not slept since the battle began. Neither have you. Sarah managed a tired smile. We'll both rest when we dock. The war leader made a sound deep in his chest, something between a growl and a laugh. Humans. You fight like you have nothing to lose, but you refuse to take care of yourselves. He paused, then added more quietly. Captain Vornis said the same thing about your kind. Before he died. Before the enemy torpedoes tore through the command deck. Before Sarah, a mere tactical consultant assigned to observe and advise, became the ranking officer on a ship full of alien warriors. Sarah looked down at her hands. They were steady now, but she remembered how they shook when she gave her first real order. Fire all forward batteries. Redirect power to shields. Evacuate Section 7 before it explosively decompresses. Simple words that meant life or death. Your captain was a good leader, Sarah said quietly. I'm sorry. He died well. We all saw it. Kraith's clawed hand rested briefly on the back of her chair. And we saw how you led after. You think like a hunter, Commander Chen. You see the pattern in the chaos. This is why we follow. Sarah wanted to argue that they followed because regulation said they had to. She wanted to say she was just doing her job, making educated guesses, getting lucky. But the words stuck in her throat. The Vrexians had followed her orders without question, even when those orders went against their natural instincts to charge forward and fight with tooth and claw. They trusted her, and somehow they had all survived. Well, not all, but more than should have. A younger Vrexian approached from the communication station. Thesic was barely past his adult naming ceremony, his fur still showing the darker patches of youth. Commander, we are receiving docking instructions from the colony. They request our casualty report and... He hesitated, his ears flattening against his skull. They ask about the feeding week preparations. Kraith's entire body went rigid. Sarah noticed several other Vrexians on the bridge suddenly stop their work, their attention fixed on the conversation. Feeding week? Sarah asked. What's that? Thesic looked at Kraith, clearly uncomfortable. The war leader's jaw tightened, his fangs barely visible. It is our tradition, Commander. When warriors return from battle, they bring meat for the cubs. Fresh kill. To show the young ones that we are still strong, still able to provide. Sarah considered this. Many species had rituals around food and family. It made sense. We don't have any fresh game on board, but surely the colony understands given the circumstances. The silence that followed her words was heavy and strange. The Vrexians exchanged glances. Thesic's tail twitched nervously. Commander, Kraith said slowly, the hunters on the colony have already prepared the kill. They will bring it when we dock, but what? Another long pause. Kraith seemed to be choosing his words with unusual care. The meat cannot be given to the cubs until the pack leader gives permission. Until you give permission, Sarah blinked. I'm not your pack leader. I'm just the ranking officer until we get home. Among my people, these are the same thing. Kraith's voice was patient but firm. You commanded us in battle. You led the pack. By our law, you are pack leader until you formally release us from service. A cold feeling settled in Sarah's stomach. So you need me to say it's okay to feed the cubs? That's all? It is not so simple. Kraith looked away, something he rarely did. The ceremony requires the pack leader to be present, to take the first portion. to show the cubs that their leader has provided for them. Sarah stood up from the captain's chair, suddenly feeling the weight of the last 36 hours crushing down on her. You want me to participate in a Vrexian cultural ceremony? Kraith, I'm human. I don't know your customs. I'll just mess it up. You are our commander, Thessic said suddenly. Both Sarah and Kraith looked at the young warrior in surprise. He ducked his head but continued. My father served under human officers before. He said humans understand what matters, not tradition for tradition's sake, but why the tradition exists. You will understand, Commander. The cubs need to see that we came home, that someone still leads us. The bridge was completely silent now. Every Vrexian was listening, though most pretended to focus on their stations. Sarah ran a hand through her short, dark hair. How long do I have to figure this out? The ceremony is traditionally held on the first sunset after warriors return, Kraith said. That gives you perhaps 10 hours after we dock. 10 hours to understand an alien culture well enough to participate in their most important family tradition. 10 hours to figure out how not to accidentally insult an entire colony of warrior predators. 10 hours before she stood in front of hungry cubs and their grieving families. Sarah wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it. She was a tactical officer, trained in fleet maneuvers and weapon systems. Her expertise was in reading battle scenarios and making split-second combat decisions. Nobody had trained her for this. But then she looked at Kraith's scarred face, at Thessic's worried eyes, at the other Vrexians watching her from across the bridge. These warriors had followed her into hell and back. They had trusted her with their lives. Now they were asking her to trust herself with something even more precious than their lives. Their families. Their traditions. Their future. All right, Sarah said, her voice steadier than she felt. Kraith, I need you to teach me everything about this ceremony. What I'm supposed to do, what I'm supposed to say, what the cubs expect. We have 6 hours until docking. Start talking. The war leader's ears lifted slightly, the Vrexian equivalent of a smile. Yes, Commander. As Kraith began explaining the ancient traditions of the feeding week, Sarah settled back into the captain's chair and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. The ship hummed around them, carrying its crew of survivors home. Home, where fresh meat waited for hungry cubs, home, where a human would have to prove she understood what it meant to be pack leader. The navigation display counted down the hours. Sarah watched the numbers decrease and wondered what she had gotten herself into. The docking clamps locked into place with a heavy thud that Sarah felt through the deck plates. Through the main viewport, she could see the Vrexian colony spread out below them, carved stone buildings mixed with newer metal structures, all arranged in circular patterns that reminded her of den complexes. Hundreds of Vrexians filled the landing platforms waiting for their warriors to come home, waiting to see who had survived. Sarah stood at the airlock beside Kraith. The war leader had spent the last 6 hours explaining Vrexian customs, but she still felt unprepared. Behind them, the surviving crew members lined up in formation. There should have been over 200 warriors. Instead, only 78 stood ready to disembark. They will want to greet you first, Commander, Kraith said quietly. As pack leader, you exit before the warriors. That feels wrong. They should go first. See their families. That is human thinking. We think differently. The pack leader goes first to show they are strong enough to face whatever waits. The warriors follow because they trust the leader has made it safe. Sarah took a breath and stepped forward as the airlock hissed open. The noise hit her immediately. Not cheering or celebration, but a sound she had never heard before. Hundreds of Vrexians creating a low, rumbling hum that vibrated in her chest. It wasn't quite a growl, not quite a song. What is that sound? She whispered. The greeting of return. Kraith answered from behind her. We do this when warriors come home from battle. It means we hear you, we see you, we remember those who do not return. Sarah walked down the ramp with her spine straight and her head up, trying to look like she deserved the greeting. The crowd of Vrexians parted, creating a path toward a raised platform where several elder warriors waited. Their fur was grizzled with age, their bodies marked with countless scars. The eldest stepped forward. I am Council Voice Murthak. We welcome the surviving warriors of the Bright Fang. His eyes, clouded with age but still sharp, fixed on Sarah. We welcome their commander. Sarah stopped at the base of the platform. I am Commander Sarah Chen, Human Liaison and Tactical Officer. I served under Captain Vornis until his death in combat. I kept command only to bring the crew home safely. And yet you kept command. Murthak's voice was neutral, impossible to read. The warriors tell us you led them through 17 enemy engagements, that you made decisions that saved lives. I did my duty. More than duty, Commander Chen. War Leader Kraith sent detailed reports during your return journey. He says you think like a hunter who has studied her prey for seasons. That you see paths that Vrexians miss because we think only of the direct approach. Sarah didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. Murthak's gaze shifted to the warriors emerging from the ship. His old face showed grief as he counted them, seeing all the empty spaces where others should have stood. So few return. So many cubs will wait for parents who cannot come. The humming sound from the crowd changed. Became lower, sadder. Council voice, Sarah said. I request permission to transfer command to a Vrexian officer and return to my fleet duties. Murthak's ears flattened. Behind her, she heard several warriors make sounds of surprise. The old Vrexian studied her for a long moment. You wish to leave immediately? Before the feeding week ceremony? I thought it would be easier if a Vrexian led the ceremony. I'm human. I don't fully understand your ways. You commanded the warriors, Murthak said flatly. By our law, you are pack leader. You cannot simply decide you are not. Sarah felt her stomach tighten. Surely there's a way to transfer that responsibility. A formal release or something. There is. You would stand before the colony and formally reject the role of pack leader. You would return the warriors to the council's authority. Okay, I can do that. However, Murthak continued, his voice harder now. You would also be declaring that you do not consider yourself responsible for the pack's welfare, that the cubs of fallen warriors are not your concern, that you led them in battle but will not honor them in peace. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She heard Kraith shift behind her, heard other warriors muttering among themselves. That's not fair, Sarah said. I care about the crew. I care about what happens to them. Then you are pack leader, Murthak said simply. There is no middle ground in Vrexian law. Either you accept responsibility for the pack or you reject it entirely. Sarah turned to look at Kraith. The war leader's expression was carefully neutral, but his eyes held something that might have been a plea. Behind him, Thesic watched her with open anxiety. Before Sarah could respond, movement at the edge of the crowd caught her attention. A group of Vrexian hunters approached, carrying large carcasses on their shoulders. The animals were massive, six-legged beasts with thick blue fur. Fresh kills, just as Kraith had described. The hunters stopped at a respectful distance from the platform. The leader, a female with distinctive white markings on her muzzle, called out, We have brought fresh meat for the cubs as tradition demands. We await the pack leader's command. Every eye turned to Sarah. She watched as more Vrexians appeared from between the buildings, smaller forms, moving with less coordination than the adults, cubs ranging from barely walking to almost adult-sized. They gathered at the edge of the ceremonial area, their eyes bright with hunger and excitement. Some of them kept looking around, clearly searching for specific adults in the crowd, searching for parents who would never return. Sarah's throat felt tight. How long will they wait? She asked Murthak quietly. Until you give the command to begin the ceremony, or until you formally reject pack leadership. The old Vrexian's voice softened slightly. The cubs do not understand human concepts of chain of command, Commander Chen. They only know that warriors went to battle, and now those warriors wait instead of providing for them. They are confused. Some are frightened. Sarah looked at the fresh meat, at the waiting hunters, at the cubs who watched everything with wide eyes. She thought about Kraith's words on the ship. You think like a hunter. You see the pattern. She was starting to see a different kind of pattern now, not a battle formation or tactical advantage, but something deeper. The Vrexians didn't just follow her because regulations said they had to. They followed because she had proven she would make the hard decisions to keep them alive, and now they were asking if she would make the hard decisions to honor their dead and care for their young. Tell me the truth, Kraith, Sarah said without turning around. If I reject pack leadership, what happens? The council will assign a new leader. The ceremony will happen. Life will continue. That's not what I asked. Silence. Then Kraith spoke again, his voice rough. The warriors will understand. Humans are not Vrexians, but they will also remember that you commanded them in battle, and then walked away in peace. Some will think you found them worthy to die with, but not worthy to live with. Sarah closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, she looked directly at Murthak. I need time to prepare. I need to learn how to do this ceremony properly. I won't dishonor your traditions through ignorance. Murthak's ears lifted slightly. You accept pack leadership? I accept that these warriors followed my orders and trusted my judgment. I accept that their families deserve to be honored. I accept that I don't fully understand what I'm getting into, but I'm willing to learn. Sarah straightened her shoulders. So yes, I accept. Now someone please tell me exactly what I'm supposed to do because those cubs look really hungry. The humming sound started again, but different this time. Louder, more energetic. Several warriors behind her made barking sounds that Kraith had told her indicated approval. Murthak nodded slowly. The ceremony begins at sunset. That gives you 4 hours. War leader Kraith will instruct you in what must be done. As for the cub, he raised his voice to address the crowd. The pack leader has spoken. The ceremony will proceed at sunset. Hunters, keep the meat fresh. Cubs, your hunger will be satisfied soon. The tension in the crowd eased slightly. The cubs began playing again, though Sarah noticed they kept glancing toward the hunters and the fresh meat. As the crowd began to disperse, Sarah finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of what she had just agreed to. She was going to stand in front of an entire colony of alien predators and participate in their most sacred tradition. She was going to pretend she knew what she was doing. Thesic appeared at her side. Thank you, Commander. My sister's cubs lost their father in the battle. They have been asking when he will come home. At least now they will eat and know that someone still watches over them. Sarah looked at the young warrior. I'm going to mess this up, aren't I? Probably, Thesic said with unusual honesty. But you will try your best. That is what matters. Sarah laughed despite herself, a short, bitter sound. I hope you're right. Kraith joined them, his expression serious. Come, Commander. We have much to discuss before sunset. The ceremony is complex, and there are many ways to give offense accidentally. That's reassuring, Sarah muttered as she followed the war leader toward one of the stone buildings. Behind her, the hunters waited patiently with their burden of fresh meat. The cubs played and tumbled, unaware of how much depended on what would happen at sunset. And Sarah Chen, tactical officer and accidental pack leader, tried to remember everything she knew about leadership, honor, and taking responsibility for others. She had a feeling she was going to. The room Kraith brought her to was carved from stone, its walls covered in markings Sarah couldn't read. A large table dominated the center, and several other Vrexian elders waited inside. Their expressions ranged from curious to openly hostile. This is the human? One of them asked, his lip curling back to show his fangs. This small thing commanded our warriors. This small thing saved 78 lives, Elder Vrosak, Kraith said firmly. Including my own. Show respect. Vrosak snorted but settled back into his seat. Sarah noticed he kept his eyes on her, evaluating her like a hunter sizing up prey. An older female gestured to an empty chair. Sit, Commander Chen. I am Elder Thesra, keeper of traditions. Kraith says you have agreed to perform the feeding week ceremony. Is this true? Sarah sat feeling absurdly small in a chair designed for 8-foot-tall predators. Yes, though I'm hoping you can help me understand what I'm supposed to do. Why? Vrosak demanded. Why does a human care about Vrexian traditions? Your kind has your own ways. Go back to your people and leave us to ours. Sarah met his angry gaze steadily. Because 78 warriors trusted me with their lives. Because some of them died following my orders. Because their cubs deserve to be honored properly, and apparently I'm the one who has to do it. You speak of honor, Vrosak growled. But you know nothing of our ways. The feeding week is sacred. It connects our past to our future. It teaches cubs that the pack survives because the strong provide for the weak. It shows them the cycle of life and death. Then teach me, Sarah said simply. I have 4 hours. Tell me what I need to know. Thesra made a sound that might have been approval. You do not argue or make excuses. That is good. Very well, Commander. The ceremony is simple in action, but deep in meaning. When the sun touches the horizon, you will stand before the colony. The hunters will present the fresh kill. You, as pack leader, will take the first portion. How much? Sarah asked. A piece large enough to show you are strong, but small enough to show you are not greedy. You will eat it raw, as all Vrexians do. Sarah's stomach turned slightly at the thought, but she nodded. Raw, understood, then what? Then you give permission for the warriors to take their portions. They feed next in order of rank. After the warriors, the other adults. Finally, the cubs. The cubs eat last? That surprised Sarah. She had assumed the ceremony was about feeding the young first. Thesra's eyes gleamed with something like approval at the question. You see the oddness good? Yes, cubs eat last. This teaches them that the pack survives because everyone has a role. Warriors hunt, adults maintain, cubs learn and grow. Only when all others are satisfied can the cubs eat, because they have not yet earned their portion through contribution. But some of these cubs just lost their parents, Sarah protested. They've already suffered. Making them wait until last seems cruel. Vrosak leaned forward. This is why humans should not lead Vrexian ceremonies. You think with emotion, not tradition. The cubs must learn that loss is part of life, that the pack continues even when individuals fall. That Elder Vrosak, Kraith interrupted. Perhaps you should tell Commander Chen about the last part of the ceremony, the part involving the orphaned cubs specifically. Vrosak's ears flattened, but he remained silent. Thesra spoke instead, her voice softer now. When the cubs of fallen warriors come forward to take their portion, the pack leader must acknowledge each one personally. Speak their parent's name. Tell the cub that their parent died with honor. Place the meat directly into their hands. Sarah felt something shift in her understanding. So the cubs eat last, but the orphaned cubs get personal attention from the pack leader. From me. Yes. It shows them that while they lost a parent, they still have the pack. They still have a leader who sees them, knows them, and will provide for them. How many? Sarah asked quietly. How many orphaned cubs? Kraith answered. 37 warriors died under your command. 22 of them had cubs. Some had multiple offspring. In total, there are 53 cubs who will need to hear their parent's name from your lips. 53. Sarah closed her eyes briefly. 53 children who would look at her, this strange alien who led their parents into battle, and expect to hear words of comfort and honor. 53 cubs who needed to know their mother or father died for something meaningful. I don't know their parents' names, Sarah said. I commanded them in battle, but I never learned all their names. We had less than a month together before the fighting started. Then you will learn them now, Thesra said firmly. She pushed a datapad across the table. Here are the names of all fallen warriors, their ranks, their actions in battle, and the names of their cubs. You have 4 hours. Memorize what you can. For those you cannot remember perfectly, Kraith will stand beside you and whisper reminders. Sarah picked up the pad and began scrolling through. Each entry showed a Vrexian warrior's image, their name in both Vrexian script and human letters, and below that, the names of their offspring. Some entries included death reports. Died defending engineering section. Died manning weapons station. Died in escape pod failure. Died following my orders, Sarah thought, but didn't say aloud. There is another matter, Vrosak said grudgingly. Your appearance. Humans do not look like pack leaders. You are small, furless, weak-looking. The cubs will not understand what they are seeing. I can't change how I look, Sarah pointed out. No, but you can present yourself properly. Wear your military uniform, the formal one if you have it. Stand straight. Speak clearly and firmly. Act like you have the right to be there even if you feel uncertain. Fake it until I make it, Sarah muttered in English, then translated for the Vrexians. Appear confident even when I'm not. I understand. Thesra stood, signaling the meeting was coming to an end. You understand the basics, Commander Chen. Now you must decide how you will perform the ceremony. You can follow tradition exactly, doing everything as past pack leaders have done. Or you can adapt it, adding your own elements while respecting the core meaning. What would you recommend? Sarah asked. If you were Vrexian, I would say follow tradition exactly. But you are not Vrexian, and everyone knows this. Trying to pretend otherwise would be foolish. Thesra's expression was difficult to read. Be human, Commander. Show us what human leadership looks like. Perhaps there is something we can learn. Vrosak made a disgusted sound but said nothing. As the elders filed out, Kraith remained behind with Sarah. She stared at the datapad, at all those names and faces. I'm going to disappoint them, Sarah said quietly. I'm going to stand up there and do everything wrong, and everyone will see that I'm not fit to be pack leader. Probably, Kraith agreed, much like Thesik had earlier. Then he added, but they will also see someone trying their best. Someone who cared enough to learn. Someone who could have walked away but chose to stay. Sarah looked up at the war leader. Did you plan this? Any of this? You told me about the ceremony on the ship, but you didn't mention all these complications. Kraith's ears twitched, the Vrexian version of a guilty expression. I told you what you needed to know to make a choice. If I had told you everything, you might have refused out of fear. But you are braver than you think, Commander Chen. I have seen you make decisions under fire when any choice meant death for someone. This is just another type of battle. This is nothing like battle, Sarah protested, isn't it? You must stand before potential enemies, assess their reactions, adjust your approach, and achieve an objective without causing damage to something precious. That is exactly like battle. The stakes are just different. Sarah wanted to argue, but she was too tired and too overwhelmed. Instead, she focused on the datapad, beginning to memorize names. Warrior Thresk, 2 cubs Pressa and Vosh. Died defending the aft shield generator Warrior Lockies. 1 cub Mara. Died in hand-to-hand combat repelling boarding parties. Warrior Drenel, 3 cubs Kesvorth and Thesic. Thesic, wait. She looked closer at the entry. Same name as the young warrior who now served with Kraith. Thesic lost his father in the battle? Sarah asked. Kraith nodded somberly. Drenel was one of our best. He died holding a corridor so that others could reach escape pods. Thesic does not speak of it. He honors his father through duty instead. Sarah thought about the young warrior's nervous energy, his eagerness to help, his words on the ship. My father served under human officers before. He said humans understand what matters. Now she would have to stand in front of Thesic and his siblings and tell them their father died honorably. She would have to look them in the eyes and pretend she had the right to pass judgment on a warrior she barely knew. The datapad felt heavy in her hands as she continued reading. Each name represented not just a fallen warrior, but a family changed forever. A hole in the pack that could never be filled exactly the same way again. Sarah had 4 hours to learn 53 cubs' names and prepare to stand before them as pack leader. 4 hours to figure out how to honor traditions she didn't fully understand. 4 hours to become someone she wasn't sure she could be. She looked at Kraith. Stay with me while I memorize these? I need to practice pronunciation. I can. The sun hung low on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that looked almost like Earth sunsets. Sarah stood in the temporary quarters they had assigned her, adjusting her dress uniform for the 3rd time. The medals on her chest felt heavier than usual. Each one represented a battle, a mission, a moment when she had to make impossible choices. Today would be another impossible choice, just a different kind. A soft knock at the door announced Kraith's arrival. The war leader wore ceremonial armor, polished to a shine despite the battle damage it still carried. He looked at her uniform and nodded approval. You look like a commander, he said. Ready?
No, Sarah answered honestly.
But it's time anyway, isn't it? The sun waits for no one, human or Vrexian. They walked through the colony together, passing stone buildings carved with generations of history. Vrexians paused in their activities to watch them pass. Some showed respect with lowered ears. Others watched with barely concealed suspicion. Sarah kept her head up and her pace steady, just as Vrosak had advised. The ceremonial grounds were in the center of the colony, a wide open space surrounded by stepped stone seating. It was already packed with Vrexians. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Sarah tried not to think about how many eyes would be watching her every move. The hunters stood near the center, their fresh kills arranged on low stone tables. The meat had been prepared according to tradition, cut into portions but still clearly recognizable as the large beasts they had been. The smell hit Sarah immediately, raw and metallic. Her human stomach rebelled slightly, but she forced herself to walk forward calmly. The cubs were gathered in a separate area, supervised by adults. Sarah could pick out which ones were orphans by their behavior. They were quieter than the others, less playful. Some kept scanning the crowd as if still hoping to spot a familiar face. Murthak stood at the center platform waiting. As Sarah approached, the elder raised his arms and the crowd fell silent. The sun sets on another day, Murthak called out, his voice carrying across the grounds. Warriors have returned from battle. Some have returned in body, others return only in memory. But the pack endures. The pack survives. The pack provides for its young. The crowd responded in unison, that same humming sound Sarah had heard at the landing platform. It vibrated through the stone beneath her feet. Pack leader, Murthak turned to Sarah. Do you accept responsibility for this pack? For the warriors who followed you? For the cubs they leave behind? Sarah's throat felt dry, but her voice came out strong and clear. I accept this responsibility. Then begin the feeding week ceremony. Show us that the pack will continue. Show us that the young will be provided for. Murthak stepped back, leaving Sarah alone at the center. She walked to the hunters and their leader presented her with a knife. It was ceremonial, ornately carved, but the blade was sharp and real. Sarah looked at the fresh meat, at the waiting crowd, at the cubs who watched with bright, curious eyes. This was the moment. Take the first portion. Eat it raw. Begin the ceremony. Her hand shook slightly as she reached for the knife. Then she stopped. Wait, she said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. Confused murmurs rippled through the Vrexians. Kraith tensed beside her, clearly worried she was about to make a terrible mistake. Sarah turned to face the crowd. Before we begin, I need to say something. I am Commander Sarah Chen of the human fleet. I am not Vrexian. I do not have claws or fangs. I cannot hunt like you hunt. I do not understand all your ways. The murmurs grew louder. Brosak, sitting in the front row of the stone seats, looked vindicated, as if his worst fears were being confirmed. But, Sarah continued, her voice cutting through the noise, I understand what it means to be responsible for those who follow you. In the human military, we have a saying, no soldier left behind. It means we do not abandon our people, living or dead. It means we honor those who fell. It means we care for the families they leave behind. She took a breath and continued. 37 warriors died in battle under my command. I gave the orders that put them in danger. Some of those orders saved lives. Some of those orders resulted in deaths. I cannot change what happened. I can only honor it. Sarah turned back to the meat and picked up the knife. So I will perform this ceremony, not as a Vrexian trying to be something I'm not, but as a human commander honoring warriors who trusted me. I will do my best to follow your traditions. I will probably make mistakes, but everything I do comes from a place of respect for those who fell and care for those who remain. The crowd was completely silent now. Even the cubs had stopped fidgeting. Sarah cut a portion of meat from the nearest carcass. Her hands were steady now. She held up the piece, showing it to the crowd, then brought it to her mouth. It was raw, still slightly warm, and tasted like metal and salt. Her human digestive system protested immediately. But she chewed and swallowed, forcing her expression to remain neutral. When she finished, she set down the knife and turned to the warriors. Warriors of the Bright Fang, you have fought with courage and skill. You have earned your portion. Come forward and eat. Kraith stepped forward first as the highest-ranking warrior. He took his portion with efficiency and honor. The other warriors followed one by one in perfect order. Sarah watched as they ate, noting how each one glanced at her as they did, as if seeking approval. When the last warrior had eaten, Sarah called forward the other adults. They came in family groups, parents and older siblings, each taking their share. The meat diminished slowly, but there was plenty. The hunters had prepared well. Finally, only the cubs remained. Cubs of the pack, Sarah called, her voice gentle but firm. Come forward. The pack provides for you. The cubs rushed forward in a tumbling mass of fur and excitement. They grabbed portions with the enthusiasm of hungry children everywhere. Sarah watched them eat, seeing some of the tension leave their small bodies. For a moment, everything seemed normal, joyful even. Then the last of the non-orphaned cubs finished eating and moved away, and 53 cubs remained, standing uncertainly at the edge of the ceremonial area. This was the part Sarah had been dreading, the part she had spent hours preparing for. Cubs of fallen warriors, Sarah said softly. Come forward, one at a time. The first cub approached slowly. She was small, barely up to Sarah's waist. Her golden fur was matted as if she hadn't been grooming properly. Sarah knelt down to be at eye level. What is your name? Pressa, the cub whispered. Sarah felt her heart clench. Pressa, daughter of Thresk. She remembered now. Pressa, daughter of warrior Thresk. Your father died defending the shield generator. When the enemy broke through, he stood his ground so others could seal the breach. He fought 4 enemies alone and brought down 3 of them before he fell. His courage saved 50 lives. Pressa's eyes were wide, reflecting the last light of the setting sun. My father was brave? Your father was very brave, Sarah confirmed. She picked up a portion of meat and placed it directly into the cub's small hands. The pack remembers him. I remember him. You should be proud. Pressa clutched the meat to her chest and scurried back to the adults, where someone Sarah assumed was an aunt pulled her into an embrace. The next cub came forward, then another. Sarah knelt for each one, spoke each parent's name, described how they had died with honor. Some cubs cried. Some stood stoic and silent. All of them listened with desperate attention to every word she said. When young Thessic's siblings came forward, Sarah saw Thessic himself watching from the warrior section, his face carefully neutral. She spoke about Warrior Drenel's bravery, about how he held a corridor alone so others could escape, and she saw Thessic's ears twitch with suppressed emotion. Sarah's knees ached from kneeling. Her voice grew hoarse from speaking. The raw meat she had eaten sat uncomfortably in her stomach. But she didn't rush. Each cub deserved her full attention. Each fallen warrior deserved to be remembered properly. The 48th cub approached, then the 49th. Sarah was starting to think she would make it through without incident when the 50th cub, a male named Vosh, looked up at her with angry eyes. "You killed my mother," he said loudly. The crowd gasped. Sarah felt Kraith move closer, ready to intervene, but she held up a hand to stop him. "Tell me your mother's name," Sarah said quietly. "Warrior Drenel." "No, wait, that was Thessic's father." The cub's ears flattened in confusion. "Warrior Cress. My mother was Warrior Cress." Sarah searched her memory. Cress died when her fighter was destroyed during the retreat. She had been part of the rear guard, buying time for the damaged ship to escape. "Your mother died so that others could live," Sarah said. "I gave the order for the rear guard to hold position. I knew it was dangerous. Your mother knew it was dangerous. She volunteered anyway because she believed the lives of her crewmates were worth defending. But you gave the order." Vosh's voice cracked with grief and anger. "You sent her there." "I did," Sarah admitted, and the crowd murmured in shock. Vrexian leaders didn't usually admit fault so directly. "I gave the order because I thought it was necessary to save the ship. Your mother followed that order because she trusted my judgment, and she was right to trust me because we survived. 78 warriors lived because of what she and the others did. But she's dead." Vosh was crying now, tears matting the fur around his eyes. "Yes," Sarah said gently. "She is dead, and that is my responsibility to carry." A will morning light filtered through the stone windows of Sarah's quarters, waking her from dreams filled with names and faces. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then her stomach reminded her about the raw meat she had eaten, and everything came rushing back. The ceremony, the cubs, Vosh's angry tears, all those watching eyes. Someone knocked on the door before she could fully process her emotions. Sarah pulled on her regular duty uniform and opened it to find Thessic standing there with a tray of food. "Commander, I brought morning meal. Cooked," he added quickly, noticing her expression. "I asked the food preparers to make it human style. I hope it is acceptable." Sarah took the tray gratefully. "Thank you, Thessic. That was thoughtful." The young warrior lingered in the doorway, clearly wanting to say something. Sarah gestured for him to come in. He entered hesitantly, his claws clicking on the stone floor. "I wanted to thank you," Thessic said finally, "for what you said about my father. My siblings needed to hear those words. My mother has been gone for many seasons, so losing father was—" He trailed off, unable to finish. "I'm sorry for your loss," Sarah said quietly. "Your father was a brave warrior. He would have liked you, I think. He always said humans were strange but honorable, that you thought differently than Vrexians but not wrongly." Thessic's ears flicked with emotion. "You proved him right yesterday. You did not try to be Vrexian. You were human, and somehow that made it better." Before Sarah could respond, another knock interrupted them. Kraith entered with council voice Murthak and surprisingly Elder Vrosak. "Commander Chen," Murthak said formally, "the council requests your presence. There are matters to discuss." Sarah's stomach sank. "I broke protocol, didn't I? I changed the ceremony too much." Vrosak snorted, but it wasn't the derisive sound she expected. "You changed everything, human. The question is whether that change was acceptable." They walked to the council chambers in tense silence. Sarah's mind raced through everything she had done the previous night, cataloging her mistakes. She had stopped the ceremony to make a speech. She had admitted to making decisions that got warriors killed. She had made a cub cry in front of the entire colony. The council chambers were filled with elders, all of them watching as Sarah entered. She stood in the center of the room, trying not to feel like prey surrounded by predators. Murthak spoke first. "Commander Chen, the council has reviewed your performance of the feeding week ceremony. We have consulted traditions. We have listened to witnesses. We have discussed your actions at great length." Sarah waited, her hands clasped behind her back in military attention stance. "What you did," Murthak continued slowly, has never been done before. You stopped the ceremony to speak about human traditions. You admitted fault in warrior deaths. You allowed a cub to openly challenge you. These things are not traditional Vrexian ways. I understand, Sarah said. If I have dishonored the ceremony, I apologize. I tried to respect your culture while being honest about my limitations. Silence, Vrosak barked. But when Sarah looked at him, she saw something strange in his expression. You will listen to the full judgment before you speak. Murthak nodded. As I was saying, what you did was not traditional. However, the council has decided that tradition is not the only measure of a successful ceremony. The purpose of the feeding week is to comfort the cubs, honor the fallen, and strengthen the pack's bonds. The old Vrexian's expression softened slightly. In this, you succeeded beyond our expectations. Cubs who have not spoken since their parents died talked to their relatives last night. Families who were drowning in grief found a way to begin healing. Warriors who survived feel validated in their choice to follow you. Sarah blinked in surprise. So I didn't ruin everything? You changed everything. Elder Thesra spoke up from her seat. You showed our people that there are different ways to lead, different ways to honor, different ways to show strength. When you knelt before the cubs, making yourself small and vulnerable, you demonstrated something most Vrexian leaders never show: humility. Vrosak stood up and walked closer to Sarah. She tensed, expecting confrontation, but instead, he performed that same gesture she had seen last night, forehead to chest, hand extended. I disagreed with allowing a human to lead the ceremony, Vrosak said gruffly. I thought it would be a disaster. I was wrong. You honored my nephew, Warrior Cress. You gave my grandnephew Vosh truth when he needed it most. For that, I thank you. Sarah felt her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. I just tried to do right by them. And in doing so, you have created a problem, Murthak said. A good problem, but a problem nonetheless. What problem? Murthak exchanged glances with the other council members. The warriors wish you to remain as pack leader, formally. Not just for ceremonies, but as a permanent advisor and leader. Sarah's eyes widened. That's not possible. I'm assigned to the human fleet. I have duties elsewhere. I can't just stay here permanently. We understand that, Thesra said. Which is why we are proposing something different. Among Vrexians, pack leaders come in two types: territorial pack leaders who govern a specific region, and honorary pack leaders who represent the pack's values and make important decisions but do not handle daily governance. You want me to be an honorary pack leader? We want to offer you that position, yes, Murthak confirmed. You would not need to remain on our colony. You would continue your military service, but you would be called upon for significant matters. Ceremonies for fallen warriors, decisions about pack direction, training of young warriors. You would be pack leader in spirit, if not in constant presence. Sarah looked around the room at all the watching elders. What would this mean exactly? What would you expect from me? Honesty, Vrosak said bluntly. Continue to tell us truth even when it is uncomfortable. Continue to think differently than we do and show us new perspectives. Continue to honor our fallen and care for our young, even from across the stars. And in return, Murthak added, you would have the full support of the Vrexian colony. We would assign warriors to train under your command. We would provide resources to your fleet. We would stand beside you in future battles, not just as allies of convenience but as pack members. It was a lot to process. Sarah had come to this colony expecting to drop off survivors and leave. Instead, she had become entangled in their culture, their traditions, their lives. And now they were asking her to make that entanglement permanent. Can I think about it? Sarah asked. Of course, Thesra said. This is not a decision to make hastily. Take the day. Speak with the warriors. Speak with the cubs if you wish. Then give us your answer tomorrow. Sarah spent the rest of the day walking through the colony, trying to understand what she was being offered. She visited the memorial gardens where names of fallen warriors were carved into stone. She watched cubs playing in the training yards, some of them wearing small armbands with their parents' rank markings. In the afternoon, she found herself at the ceremonial grounds again. Several adult Vrexians were there with their cubs, and she watched as a mother pointed to the spot where Sarah had knelt the night before. That is where the human pack leader honored your cousin, the mother said to her cub. That is where she remembered those who fell. The cub, too young to have been at the ceremony, looked up at Sarah with curious eyes. Are you the human? Sarah smiled despite herself. Yes, I'm the human. You don't look like a pack leader. You're small, so I've been told. The mother laughed, a barking sound. Cubs speak truth without filters. But my youngster is right to be curious. We have never had a human pack leader before. Will you stay with us? I don't know yet, Sarah admitted. It's a big decision. The biggest decisions usually are. The mother scooped up her cub. Whatever you choose. Know that you gave my family a gift last night. My brother died in battle under your command. His cub, my nephew, has barely spoken since we received news. But after hearing you speak his father's name, after hearing how bravely he died, my nephew smiled for the first time in weeks. That is worth more than I can express. As the mother walked away, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders again. These people had trusted her. They had opened their culture to her. They had shown her their grief and their hope. Could she really walk away from that? That evening, Sarah found Kraith on the landing platform watching ships come and go in the twilight. I keep thinking about what you said on the ship, Sarah told him. About humans thinking like hunters, about seeing patterns. You disagree? No, I think you're right. But I also think Vrexians see patterns that humans miss. You understand loyalty and honor in ways that go deeper than our military codes. You understand family and tradition. We could learn from each other. Kraith's ears lifted slightly. Does this mean you will accept the council's offer? Sarah took a breath. I think I will. But I need to set conditions. I won't be pack leader in name only. If I accept this role, I want to actually help. I want to train warriors, yes, but I also want to help create better communication between human and Vrexian forces. I want to prevent the kind of mistakes that get warriors killed unnecessarily. The council will agree to this, Kraith said confidently. This is exactly the kind of thinking they hope for. Yo,